Hello there, and welcome to another episode of EKU Online's eCast series. EKU Online's mission is to change lives by providing access to affordable and high-quality degree programs in meaningful disciplines that positively impact our society. We thank you for joining us today. Today, our guest is Dr. Lynnette Noblitt. Dr. Noblitt received her undergraduate degree in molecular biophysics and biochemistry from Yale University. She received a master's degree in biological chemistry from the University of Michigan Medical School and Juris Doctorate from the University of Michigan Law School. She practiced intellectual property law at Ropes and Gray in New York City. She is currently a professor and chair in the Department of Government at Eastern Kentucky University, where she also serves as the Paralegal Program Director. Welcome, Dr. Noblitt. Thank you so much for your time today. We sincerely appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to chat.
As we begin our discussion, Dr. Noblitt, let me just say you have a pretty impressive resume. Had no idea until recently that you studied molecular biophysics and biochemistry. How does a scientist educated at Yale come to be a University of Michigan Law School graduate, practice law in New York City, and then end up at Eastern Kentucky University?
Well, it's impressive, or I just can't stick to a job. It's one or the other, right? Yeah, I'll go with it's impressive, sure, for this week. To be honest, I don't know. It was sort of a journey for me, but it was a journey both a positive and negative one, right? When I went to Yale, I was certain I wanted to be a research scientist. I thought I'd go on and, I don't know, cure cancer, cure AIDS, something like that. And I did enjoy science quite a bit. I completed my undergraduate degree in molecular biophysics and biochemistry, and I did a lot of research while I was an undergraduate. I was very fortunate to get to do that. However, I found myself sort of listless in the lab. I didn't like the day in, day out sort of solitary work in a lab. I mean, yes, there are lots of lab mates and you collaborate with them, but I found myself sort of lacking something, and I wasn't quite sure what it was. I was fortunate my senior year in college. I was able to take a course on science and public policy with the science advisor to President Bush Sr. At the time. And he really sort of inspired me to sort of consider how science affects all of society, and that scientists themselves as a small community need to branch out into other fields to be able to promote science, scientific literacy, appropriate scientific policy. And so after undergraduate, I immediately went on to a PhD program because that's what I was supposed to do. And I often now warn students, maybe you shouldn't do what you're supposed to do if it's not feeling right for you. And ultimately, about a year into that, I was a PhD dropout. I was just as miserable at the bench as I was as an undergraduate. It wasn't getting any better. And I knew I needed to take a different route. And that's really when I started to explore, okay, what do I love about science and what do I want to do with my life in the future? And that's what really led me to go to law school. My parents thought I was insane. My friends were completely confused. My PhD professor, thought I was suffering mental illness. Really, it was quite a time for me, but I've never looked back. I loved law school. The second I got there, suddenly the idea of this, this rigorous logical thinking, debating skills, public speaking skills, these were all things that I sort of knew I had, but I never really got to use them as an undergrad or graduate student in science. And all of a sudden they were really highly valued. Also, I found that my scientific background was very highly valued in the law. I went on to practice patent law. I did a lot of patent litigation involving pharmaceuticals, telephone technology, you name it. I moved well outside of molecular biophysics by the time I was practicing within the law, and the technical background actually served me really well. So a lot of times I have students that say, okay, I want to go to law school. What should I major in? And I tell them, anything. You can major in anything. And they look at me like I'm lying, as if I'm sort of, hiding the ball and I'm making them guess, what's the perfect major? It must be out there. But there isn't one. The American Bar Association wants a broadly educated bar. They want people from all over the spectrum. So if you're a agriculture major, you may very well find yourself able to go to law school and help the agriculture community from a legal perspective. If you're a nursing major, obviously there are lots of roles for paralegals and attorneys with nursing backgrounds. So I encourage students, do what you love, do what you would want to do in your spare time. If you find yourself, always logging on and running to read about scientific public policy, maybe it's time to move that way. So it's been a crazy journey, but I never look back. I never regretted it. I think I don't regret majoring in science, and I don't regret leaving it either.
It's a good answer for a good journey.
It's still ongoing. I still don't feel like
It's still a work in progress. While practicing law for Ropes and Gray, you specialize in intellectual property law, and you just mentioned this. Would you share an interesting story about one of your cases, perhaps?
Probably the most fun case that I enjoy telling stories about is a trademark case. I did a little bit of trademark work as well while I was at Ropes and Gray. And one of the cases, we actually represented a cola company, a soda company, which you probably recognize, that likes to use little bears at Christmas, little white teddy bears or polar bears at Christmas time. Well, there was another cola company that also used a bear, and you probably actually wouldn't know the name of that other company. They were quite small. But this little company decided to sue our big company and said that we had stolen their bear. We can't use our bears, and that they get bears and colas. And we said, well, no, that's pretty broad. And in trademark terms, we thought that was too much. So we actually, in trademark law, when you're dealing with things like major marketing launches that are occurring around holiday times, you have to go to the courts and approach them for injunctions. You need really fast relief for your clients because they need to be able to launch these commercials and that sort of thing. So we ended up having to approach the courts very quickly. And one of the things that we had to demonstrate to them is that there are lots of little white bears, little white teddy bears, little white polar bears, little cuddly things, and you can't have all of them. You can sell your cola using one bear, and we'll sell our cola using another bear. So we ended up with the fun instance in which we had to ask our paralegals to basically, here's the company credit card, go buy every white bear you can find in town. And so they gathered seriously, probably close to 100 white bears. Fortunately, New York City around the holidays is full of white bear little toys at the time. So they gathered those up. We dragged them all into federal court, putting them all around the courthouse in the courtroom before the judge. And we said, this bear, there are tons of white bears. And it ultimately would convince the court that our client could use one white bear and another cola company could use another white bear. We would not be infringing trademarks. So then after that, of course, we all had to celebrate our big win. And then we had to figure out what to do with all these bears. We ultimately would donate them to children's charities. So I think all of us kept one as a souvenir.
Appropriately theatrical. That's very cinematic.
Exactly.
Good thing to be doing in New York for sure. I like that. You are the paralegal program director here at EKU, and as such have a huge responsibility to ensure the strength and viability of that program. So if you could, Dr. Noblitt, please tell us a little bit about what a paralegal is and the paralegal program and what makes it unique. And is it completely online?
Sure. Well, first off, let's start with what is a paralegal? A paralegal is a paraprofessional that works under the supervision of an attorney performing tasks that have traditionally been done by an attorney. So what does that mean in sort of layman's terms? There are lots of tasks that attorneys have to do: drafting motions, drafting memos, drafting forms, various documents that are either used in litigation or some type of transactional work within the law. Paralegals come in, they learn about these areas of law, and they're able to do those drafts under the supervision of an attorney that ultimately will review and sign that work. So what that means for attorneys is they're able to say leverage their work. That's the phrase we use in the law, where we're able to hire 2-3 paralegals, and you're getting 2 or 3 sets of clients served simultaneously, and then the attorney will come in and supervise those paralegals after the fact. Now at EKU, our paralegal program is accredited by or approved by the American Bar Association. This means that we have various things that we have to do to ensure that our paralegal students graduate with the skills that they need to be job ready day one. We very carefully assess our courses and our student work to make sure that our students are always fulfilling the expectations of their employers. So what does that mean? That means that we're constantly having, in these cyclical periods where we're having people come in from the legal community and review our courses. Make sure that, if we're offering a course in elder law, are we offering everything that an elder law attorney would expect a paralegal to be able to do, again, day one when they came into the office? Are we, in litigation, are we making sure that our students have the sort of systems of organization and the basic litigation skills to be able to draft documents, again, that attorney supervisors will require them to do when they come? What this ultimately means for us is, because we're in this constant discussion with the legal community, is we know exactly what's expected of our students, and we try to meet and exceed that. And I think it's very clear by the legal community that we succeed in that task. Many of our students, probably more than half, are employed before they ever leave the paralegal program. They'll do an internship, say the summer before graduation or semester or so before graduation, and they'll get gobbled up right then and there. I have a steady stream of offers from employers asking me, do you have anybody who wants to work in this town or wants to do this area of law? And we're consistently finding our students jobs. This past academic year, the 2021 academic year, I did a survey of our students and we had 100% placement. So that's something that I'm very, very proud of, and something that I think is a tremendous asset to students who come to EKU. I'm consistently, I do interviews, I do exit interviews with every single internship supervisor, and I consistently hear that our students exceed their expectations and often perform better work than other paralegal programs. And frankly, that's how I want to keep it.
100% placement. That's not nothing, as they say.
No, it's not.
In your experience, what kind of students have success in your program? In other words, what kind of skills, abilities, or attitudes should a student come to this program with in preparation for a career in paralegal?
I guess kind of following up on your last question, is it 100% online? Yes and no. It is 100% online in that students never have to come to campus. But I know a lot of times students think of online work as being completely asynchronous. In other words, they can do it whenever they want. And the American Bar Association requires that approved paralegal programs have 9 semester hours, or what ends up being 3 classes synchronous. So we offer 3 classes synchronously in a format that we feel is the most friendly, if you will, for working students or online students. We offer our courses in Legal Research and Writing 2 and Litigation 2, both online, where they meet by Zoom 1 evening a week. And then we have a paralegal seminar that we meet in a residency format, which is literally all day for 5 days, running over a weekend. So we try to not, cut into too much work time. I know a lot of people are very busy, but those classes are synchronous. You will actually meet with your students, fellow students, and the faculty teaching those courses on Zoom for several hours throughout the semester. Now, what makes a good paralegal student, a good online paralegal student? Well, in a lot of ways, if you can succeed as an online student, you're going to be an excellent paralegal. What do paralegals have to do? They have to be organized, they have to be self-motivated, and they have to be able to problem solve and have quite a bit of independent judgment. So students that come, and not saying that we don't teach students these skills, we of course focus on it throughout our coursework, but a good online student is one who keeps up with dates and says, okay, I know the first day of class is August 15th. They don't have to be reminded that they have to physically go somewhere. They know to log on. In fact, they're probably logging on August 13th and seeing when the course starts to open, and we try to get those open early for people. They're downloading syllabi and calendars, and they're making sure they know when everything is due and what the specific due dates are for particular professors. Is this something due at noon? Is this something due at 11:59? What day is it due? Is this going to be group work that I have to coordinate with other people? These are all the exact same skills that paralegals find themselves when they enter an office. Okay, what trials do we have this month? What attorneys are working on those trials? And how do I get everyone organized and moving? Online students also have tremendous attention to detail. It's careful that students read every email and every announcement from instructors and follow through with every part of that. Again, paralegals have to do the exact same thing. They have to be able to take written and oral instructions and follow them to a T. So I think, again, if you're going to succeed as a paralegal, I think being an online student is a great way to sort of train some of those skills. And in fact, we've had a lot of supervisors, when I do exit interviews with them, say that they really admire their paralegals for having done their education online, that they realize the sort of struggles that innately has, particularly in the last year with the pandemic. I think a lot of attorneys have watched their children struggle with online learning, and then they turn to their paralegal and they're like, wow, you're doing that, plus working for me full time, plus caring for 2 kids or an elderly parent. I am amazed at you. But again, the sort of self-motivation, ability to solve problems, and get everything done at the end of the day while working remotely is a tremendous accomplishment and something that prepares you for that career.
Please tell us a little bit about your graduates, graduation rate, their ability to find jobs. You mentioned 100% placement rate just recently, and their preparedness for future education.
our graduation rate for students who enter the program and find that it's the right fit for them. Again, some students come in, take a class, and they're like, oh, paralegal wasn't quite for me. We pride ourselves in having a very high graduation rate. I couldn't give you an exact percentage just from our online, but we're talking over 80, 85% of our students get through the program. Again, we have very dedicated faculty who are really try to help the students as much as they can to be successful. And I think once students get into the program, figure out a way to sort of balance their life and balance the coursework, they can be quite successful, even if they are holding down jobs and caring for families and all the other things, myriad of things that we find ourselves doing these days. Again, for employment, that's one of our points of pride. Paralegal supervisors really value our graduates and often are clamoring for them. Lately, I've had far more attorneys asking for paralegals than I can produce in student graduates coming up. In fact, a lot of attorneys have been asking for, oh, I'd like someone with 3 years experience. Oh, I'd take someone who's graduating in a year or so. That would be fine. I also will say I keep in touch with a lot of our alumni, and they continue to have the same type of employment success that we see of our recent graduates. Again, as we're placing people, we're placing them into entry-level positions. That's the nature of the beast, if you will. But I also find that a lot of our alumni, are texting me, Facebook messaging me saying, oh, I got this job at this incredible firm, or I got this job at the DOJ. And they're definitely working their way up through the employment ladder, if you will, and paralegal, and they're quite successful as that in that regard as well. That also in turn, then of course makes it better for our entry-level paralegals, because they all of a sudden find themselves as supervisors in charge of hiring decisions. And of course, they're then emailing me like, oh, I need 2 assistants, who do you got? So it's one of these sort of self-perpetuating things that keeps us going. And I'm really proud of our employment, both entry level and more senior level in our program. Now, we have a lot of paralegals that do go on to continue their education. There are probably around 15 to 20% of our students go on to law school within 3 years of graduation. That's typically how long I'm following them. A lot of times students come to the paralegal profession sort of with one toe in the water towards law school. If I like this, I'll do law school. Maybe I'll go work for a firm for a couple of years and make sure. And I think that's incredibly wise. Law school is extraordinarily expensive, time-consuming, and difficult. So if you find yourself a year into law school hating law, you've wasted a lot of money and time, and you don't have a lot to show for all of that. Versus coming and doing a paralegal program, getting an undergraduate degree, which frankly, really no one ultimately regrets. Undergraduate degrees can take you so many places. They later can go work for a law firm for a year or two and say, would I like to be my own boss? And if so, then law school's right for them. We have a lot of other students that go on to graduate programs. For instance, our Master's in Public Administration program is very popular with a lot of students who want to go and work for nonprofit organizations, say a legal aid or an immigration clinic, something along those lines. We also have a lot of students that I find over the course of their career, say within 5-10 years of graduation, want to go work for either court, the administrative offices of the courts in some regard, working for a judge or working themselves as a clerk, or working within the federal or state government. And the MPA, Master's in Public Administration, really helps them there. Then frankly, I have students that go everywhere out of this program, and it constantly amazes me. I track our students very carefully, and I've actually added several guest speakers to our paralegal seminar class, some of which I think my students think are crazy, but I have a fair number of students who go into education. They will go into K-12 teaching, typically high school. I guess I've got one middle school teacher, but I've probably got a dozen high school teachers now. I think that the paralegal program, we do, obviously we have a general education background, and then we also have multiple courses in political science, upper division political science, and English. And I think a lot of people, obviously that prepares them for a master's in teaching. And I think a lot of people sort of get inspired. Maybe they're working with kids in a family law setting, and they decide they want to work with them in a slightly different setting. So we have several people who go on to teaching. I've had a lot of people go into insurance, into banking. I've had a lot of people go into working in-house in various corporations. So, and hospitals. I find a lot of people go and work in-house in hospitals as well. So, paralegals typically and most commonly out of our program, their entry-level job will be sort of a traditional go work for, an attorney or a firm. But 5-10 years out, it's amazing where all of our students have gone. And sometimes that involves more education, and sometimes that just involves, getting a license for real estate or something like that, or simply getting experience and moving to exactly where they want to be.
Nationwide, Dr. Noblitt, what does the future look like for paralegals?
The future for paralegals, like other paraprofessionals, is very bright. I'm excited to see where the paralegal profession is going right now. First off, the Department of Labor continues to predict that paralegals, the growth in the paralegal market will outpace the rest of the labor market. Furthermore, I think paralegals are starting to gain some traction and respect within the legal community so that they can start to do more things within the legal community. We see more and more programs such as ones in Colorado and Washington that look into licensing paralegals so that paralegals can do more assistance of, for instance, family law matters, elder law matters, things of that nature. And I think that as the population becomes older and more complex in our sort of generational gaps, we're starting to see that the legal community is really going to have to step up and assist in access to the civil legal community. So I think paralegals are really going to be what fills that gap and allows a lot of people who need assistance in divorce, assistance in wills, trusts, things of that nature. There's going to be more and more demand for paralegals, both to do the types of things they're currently doing now and to expand their skill sets into other types of areas of the law. So I think it's a tremendous growth field in and of itself, and I think it's evolving to become more sophisticated.
Perfect. Your program, Dr. Noblitt, seems to have embraced the online modality in which this program is offered. Please tell us what you think the qualities of a good online student should be.
Good online students, again, would be great paralegals someday. Good online students are very organized. Good online students have time management skills. Good online students advocate for themselves and solve problems themselves. A student that I worry about sometimes is someone who logs onto a class, can't find something, and then sits back sort of passively hoping that it will be magically provided for them, or somehow the instructor can read their mind that they can't find something. That's an online student that concerns me. An online student who's always on the discussion board asking, what about this? What about that? Sometimes they'll even apologize. Am I asking too many questions? No, you are not. That's the way online learning works. Is a student enters a learning management system, and then they use the resources that are given to them. They read through everything, and then they start asking questions, and they advocate for themselves if they're having trouble, either accessing something or obviously just solving the problems themselves. That is exactly the same types of skills that paralegals have to have as well. They have to be someone who is able to walk into the office, know that the attorney is going to be in trial all day and they're not going to see them, and they've got 15 client matters they need to start taking care of and prepare, and they have to problem solve for themselves, manage their time, supervise perhaps other legal and office staff, and keep the office moving until the attorney can return and give them 15 minutes to solve all the questions they've been developing over the course of the day. Online students that can start to master all those skills become great paralegals out in the field.
So we've had the opportunity to briefly review a few of your online courses, and they're outstanding. I mean, they're carefully laid out, they're simple to navigate, they're rich, they're rigorous. Even with such excellent courses and excellent instructors, what challenges might a student have working online? And then what do you do as a program to help mitigate problems and difficulties there?
I think the greatest challenge for students is the pace at which our classes can go. Students, unlike a traditional campus student who shows up, moves into a dorm, and sort of has a full 16 weeks to complete 4 or 5 classes, online students, they come to us and they're going to be in shorter courses. They're going to be taking fewer courses, usually 2 a semester. They're only going to meet for 8 weeks. And so therefore students really have to, again, aggressively be, ready, day 1 in class. You can't kind of saunter in 2 weeks into the semester and find your textbook in an online class. If class starts August 15, you're logging in August 14, waiting for that class to open. You're reading the syllabus the second you can, and you're getting yourself organized and ready to be able to succeed throughout the semester. So I think that's the greatest challenge, is for students to realize the sort of time commitment that it's going to take, and that they're going to need to make sure that they motivate themselves to never miss a deadline, to always, if you're not early or late sort of thinking, which again serves you well in the paralegal community where, we're the first ones in and the last ones out in a litigation setting. So paralegals that are able to succeed in those 8-week courses, again, start to learn the sort of pace and demands and organizational tasks that are required. What do we do as faculty? Well, a lot of what we do is we try to be the perfect attorney supervisors, if you will. We try to lay out exactly what our demands and needs are going to be throughout the semester. Day one, students should know exactly what their assignments are for the entire 8 weeks. And there's very little alteration from the syllabus. Of course, obviously, if someone is ill or someone's child is ill, we're not monsters. We're going to work with the students. But we want people to know that you have to keep up with this pace. If you fall behind, it's just really hard to catch up in an 8-week setting. So we try to allow everyone to plan their lives as much as possible in that 2-month period. And then, hopefully, as students mature as students, I think they start to learn sort of the tricks of the trade or things that work for them, things that work for their families, and they're able to be successful.
If you had to give an elevator speech to a handful of prospective paralegal students, you had about 60 seconds to tell them why they should earn their degree from EKU, Dr. Noblitt. What do you say to that group? I
think that the strongest points of the EKU paralegal program are that we're ABA approved, and therefore their degree allows them to be able to sit for any credentialing or licensing exam currently that exists out there, both at a state and national level. Obviously, we're not licensing paralegals quite yet out of our state, but that's something that's going to come, and we're going to be leaders in that area. I also think that we're really excellent at preparing paralegals to be job ready day one. We keep our finger on the pulse of the legal community to make sure exactly what is going to be expected out of our paralegals, and we're constantly altering our curriculum and our classes to make sure that our students are learning exactly what's going to be expected of them. In turn, I think we've got that feedback loop where employers and supervisors know that's what we do, and therefore they have a great deal of trust in our program and in our graduates, and they give them a chance. And once they get their foot in the door, they're able to be successful. And then from there, life takes them all sorts of amazing places.
So many of our faculty and administrators on here at EKU, Dr. Noblitt, wear multiple hats and have multiple roles that they are performing in day to day with their duties, and you are no exception to that. But if you could, please share with our listeners a little bit about your personal interests and what you like to do in your spare time when you have it.
I don't know. The idea of spare time these days is laughable, but yeah, I'm a mother of two, so actually one of my sons just went off to college, so I get a lot of snaps and texts from him. But obviously, I spending a lot of time with my family is very important to me. I also, I don't know, I guess I'm a typical hippie professor or something. I like gardening, I like yoga, I like all these sort of traditional nerdy pursuits. I also help with the EKU mock trial team, which I found to be a really fun way to combine working with students, mentoring students, and working on litigation and sort of, if you will, giving me that sort of competitive drive that I think litigation always provided me that perhaps academia does not as much. So the EKU mock trial team, I travel with other coaches and students on that throughout the academic year, and that's a lot of my hobby as well.
Is there anything else you'd like to share with our listeners today?
I think for this setting, I think one of the things that I hope listeners get out of today's session is an understanding of the paralegal profession, the understanding that paralegals are not just individuals who enter law firms and are sitting in offices doing sort of clerical work. They're not secretaries. They are individuals who are out in the legal community providing support to a variety of settings. And they can go all sorts of places from a paralegal program that don't necessarily involve the paralegal or even legal profession. Although the paralegal program is not in and of itself a liberal art. It can prepare students to go several places. Again, we've had students go to law school. I've had students go on to get counseling degrees. They've practiced paralegal in paralegal settings around family law lawyers, and then they decide, I don't want to deal with the legal part. I want to deal with the counseling part, and they're well prepared to do that. And I'm very proud of our students and our program in that it prepares students to go a variety of directions. I was reading once that students, people on average in America, a kid born today will have on average 8 jobs in their lifetime. And that doesn't mean 8 job settings, but actually 8 job titles, like their CIP codes would be different. And I feel like the paralegal program owes it to our students to prepare them for all 8 of those. And even if they're fresh out of high school, come to us, get a paralegal degree and start as a paralegal, the other 7 jobs on average they get, have we given this sort of critical thinking, critical reading, communication skills to prepare them? And again, that's our goal, is to be able to do that. And I think we're succeeding.
Our guest today has been Dr. Lynnette Noblitt of the EKU Online Paralegal Program. Thank you so much for your time today, Dr. Noblitt. It's been a real pleasure speaking with you and getting to learn a little bit more about the world of paralegal and its significance and what a key part it is of EKU's educational offering.
Thanks for having me. It's been fun.